Welcome to another episode of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. Visit ArtistFirst.com. You want to send a question or comment in, hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. And here they are. We call them the wise ones, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, D-Man. Episode sounds like we're having a seizure of some kind. It's okay, folks. You do not adjust your dial. You are not having a seizure that we know of. You might be having a seizure, but if they do that thing with your face, look in the mirror, and if it cracks, then you're having a seizure. Anyway, hi, everybody. I'm Michael Lyons, and this is the Soul of Everyman.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret. And tonight's show, I hope you weren't expecting anything. Because tonight we're going to talk about low expectations. No, we're going to talk about the tyranny of expectations. But interestingly enough, just to launch right into it, expectations can be either way, can't they? They can be low and they can be high. And in some ways, both can be problematic, and there's kind of four ways to look at expectations. Okay, there's low and high, and there's the ones that you sort of place upon yourself, and there's ones that are placed upon you, by either society or by your peers or by your parents or by people around you. So if you were expecting many different types of expectations, that was pretty accurate. We had started the show and we put up this really boss graphic about in essence the expectations of others, are sort of we sort of call it the tyranny of expectations, which is in essence how much expectations can come to rule your thought and rule your life. And it's true, but there is another danger in expectations in that you can internalize them, and then you, in essence, can sit there and never be satisfied with your own, with your own life because of your own internal expectations. Body image is a good one. People have an expectation, maybe that came from external sources, what their body image should be like, and after a while, they can internalize that, and that can lead to all kinds of pathologies and psychoses. Various types of eating disorders have to do with what people expect, their bodies to look like.
Right. Which one are we discussing first?
I was expecting you to figure that out.
Because you've covered both simultaneously, and it's like
I'm just trying to meet my own high expectations. All right, we're gonna drop back and punt here for a second. Let's be a little bit more organized. So the topic tonight was really the tyranny of expectations, and I think what that implies, sort of the unreasonableness. Tyranny is something which is you're being forced, you're being coerced.
You're being dictated to.
Exactly.
And that feeling of being shown that this is the way it's got to be, and there's no other way for it to be, can be applied as you had said in the beginning, both ways. Expectations on you by others and expectations upon yourself. And that habit form, because it is a result of what you are projecting should be.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that in so many different ways. So which way do you want to go first?
Well, if I just back up into what you just said, the what should be is already a mental projection, right? So we're already putting a value, a sort of a value judgment based on, a construct which says that something that we have now is in some way wrong, or at least less than ideal, and that we are responsible to, in some way, modify either the situation or ourselves or both things in order to rectify that, in order to make it meet expectations. And we all are subject to these, to these kind of let's call them almost like a goad or a prodding, whether it's subtle or overt, where you're basically told, oh well, you've got to have the right, car or the right career or the right live in the right place and have the right possessions and do all these things, make this much money and so on. These sort of expectations, and we're all guilty of both accepting them as well as imposing them. And then society at large, a culture has various expectations, and there's the differences between, let's say, an Oriental culture or an Eastern culture versus a Western culture, and how much society's expectations are enforced. In some cultures, I won't say East or West because it's really in both, the expectations can be such that you're a pariah if you don't meet them.
Right. On many different levels.
Yeah.
It is something that when you're a child, when you're growing, you begin to understand what an expectation is. Because as a child, first you're just trying to be able to master your own body, to be able to figure out how to move your hands and stand up, balanced, and then really begin to walk. This is the beginning. And if you have examples around you, you're watching, say, oh, you mean you guys can actually move that way? You can open that thing, that door? Wow.
Open the fridge, get to where the food is.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
Yeah.
You guys can do that?
Yeah, this is awesome. Open the cupboard, get to the cookies.
Mm-hmm. But this is, when you're little like that, everything is exciting. You're exploring. It's all so new, and there's so much to learn. Just to be able to go from here to there and move yourself to go from here to there, and it's a natural thing. Your expectation is, I will be able to stand and walk. I will be able to do things on my own, and it's a series of learning that happens all the way through. And it's at that point where it begins to alter a bit, because then the expectations of somebody else start being introduced to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to join this group, you're going to have to do it a certain way. So then it's like, well, what does that mean? Certain way. And if it's like going to school, like you're going to have to be able to go potty by yourself.
Right. Or I think joining a group, or you're expected to behave yourself, to meet these sort of both written and unwritten rules, the mores of society, or just of your own family. And each family's expectations can be considered their own sort of microculture, and then there's the sort of the macro society culture of what people expect you to do.
Well, that was the idea. The family was the foundation of a society.
Oh, absolutely.
So you learned how to negotiate with your own family. You learned what was accepted, what wasn't accepted, and depending upon your own person, you decided to take it or not take it or adapt it in some way, shape, or form. But you have to begin by learning what those expectations happen to be.
Yeah.
So, as a child, you're learning about family expectations. And then as you grow older, that circle widens into, well, the expectations of my friends. If I'm their friend, I should be doing this.
Right.
And then that matures, hopefully.
Well, at each level, or throughout your life, you're handed these sort of, an expectation is not an overt thing in many cases. You get these sort of by osmosis. You get these kind of subtle corrections. No, you shouldn't do this. Must do this. Mustn't do that. And the idea of you must excel. That's kind of a general expectation that people kind of lay on top of their children. You see it in the toxic expectations of parents who live vicariously through their children, whether it's in sports, and you see that a lot in sports, where children aren't allowed to just be. They're expected to do all the time. Do. I think today we're very much, maybe more than we were in the last couple of generations, structuring the lives of children to give them things to do all the time. And I would postulate, we can go, as we go along, that expectations are always things that you have to do, or that you are supposed to do, and you're not allowed to just be. It's always sort of a pushing you to do, to meet, to accomplish, to acquire.
Well, this society is goal-oriented, so when that happens, you have expectations that are presented to you at an early age, like this is the only way to be. You have to do things. You have to prove that you're worth something.
Well, that's what I mean. Right there. Stop right there. You have to prove. You have to do something in order to be worth something, and it belies the internal, intrinsic worth of a person.
Right. And it's supposed to have been balanced. The worth concept had to do with work, but it's been concentrated on to an extreme so that now it's extended to things. Things have value more than need be.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is that you're when you're, let's say we were talking about being born and you're a young child, the expectations that are put upon you are low, but as you mature, all of a sudden you're given things that you must, like little bars, like things that you have to pass, that you have to accomplish, achieve, in order to meet these kind of expectations. Now, a life without any expectations would be, it might be aimless, from the outside. But, in some ways, that you mentioned it just now, the balance. One of the things we were talking about here was the tyranny of expectations, where in essence the balance is all on the do, and it becomes less and less and less the be, the just be, the unstructured play, the internal, the internal kind of completeness, the not needing to do things in order to be worthy or worth something, is oftentimes discounted by this tyranny.
Well, when a person is not encouraged to allow oneself to explore, because when you do that on your own, you begin to push yourself in a direction because you really are curious about something, or you'd like to learn things, whatever the subject may be, or what has engaged you. And it's a natural learning at that point because
Right.
you are completely immersed in this, and you will learn automatically. Children learn like sponges. This is why they learn to walk and talk and so quickly, because they're completely immersed in it, and they really want to communicate when they want to talk, or they really want to be able to move on their own. So they learn how to crawl, or try to begin to walk, or run.
Yes. And, and I think the nub of that is that if you're doing something that you feel rewards your your internal sort of, I want to do it. It pleases me. Whatever it is, even if it's something very difficult, it becomes that Campbell, follow your bliss kind of thing. And
Well,
it's not these. I think the expectations have a connotation of externally making you do things even if you don't want to do them.
the difference is people enjoy challenges, but it's challenges that they really like to be able to be engaged in, as opposed to you need to do this, and it may be difficult, but this is what we are expecting you to do.
Right. And some of it has to do with conformity too.
Mhm.
There's certainly a value to not having a completely chaotic environment. That society has some order to it. But when it gets out of balance, it becomes the conformity of the clique, or the conformity of actual tyranny. Where you must obey the dictates of the state, or the dictates of the society, or there's severe punishments. Whether you see it today in some totalitarian regimes where they're surveilling every citizen, and literally imposing a the expectation that you behave has real life consequences. If you don't, it subtly it doesn't subtly, it overtly takes away privileges from you. Let's say the ability to move, or the ability to enjoy a certain level of technology is taken away from you or restricted because you're not conforming. And this is certainly a dark side of society's expectations becoming tyrannical and dictatorial. And that's what I mean.
It's a tyranny when there is no freedom to choose.
Correct, always. And
but that's the understanding. Usually when the expectation comes and you're trying to teach, you're also teaching the broadness of viewpoint to let the child see that there is always more than one viewpoint on things. So if there is more than one viewpoint, it's teaching them to be able to switch viewpoints, which is vital for a human being to begin to understand that it's not all about you.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe that's a good point to move back into the expectations of that are internal to you. I mean, I think you mentioned it before that the person's own internals are kind of guided by what they want to do. And if you expect that, if internally you think that no one is going to tell me what to do ever, I'm always going to do exactly what I want to do. That works for about 10 seconds, and then somebody says, well, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to cooperate with you. I'm not going to.
I'm not feeding into that.
I'm not feeding into that. I'm not going to play along. It's got to be sort of a this gets that kind of trading, because we all have similar, if not identical, needs. We all want to be able to do what we want to do at a particular time. But in the broader sense, your ability to do whatever you want depends on many other factors, including many other people. And so that if you expect that whatever you want will be the top priority for everyone else in the world, you're the tyranny, you're the dictator,
Right.
Now you're turning it on its head, where everything that I want is what everyone else wants,
Right. Right. Well, how big is your world? Who do you include in your world? And are you a real us and them kind of person, where you put the divide up so strongly that there's no room for openness of concept or person?
Well, right. I mean, in one sense, tyranny is on both sides, right? If you say I am the Lord of all things, whatever I want is what everyone else must do, then you are the dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And many tyrannical or examples of tyrannical societies are these kind of unitary leadership where everyone else is subject to the will of one, and therefore whatever that one kind of expects isn't just a suggestion. It has the force of compulsion, of law.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these kind of singular tyrannies where the one individual's rights trump everybody else's, and then you have these sort of societal tyrannies where the society's expectations, and we can talk about various cultures, but you have examples from your background, and there are other examples in the world where the expectation of what the shame, let's say, that's used to control people if they don't meet the expectations of the society, whatever it is, that this thing is what we all do, and if you don't do it, you are shunned, a pariah. Your family is shunned. You're a pariah. You're not one of us anymore. You're pushed outward and rejected and made to feel not welcome.
Well, you're made to feel not human anymore.
Not human, exactly.
Because that element of shame dehumanizes you.
It does. It can.
And so when that happens, you feel awful, but also the people around you almost feel justified in picking on you.
Yes.
And you sit there and you go, what is this?
Well, I think that don't go too fast past that point. It's a great point, because the expectations are used as a lash
Mm-hmm.
to deny the humanity of those who don't meet them.
Right.
What we basically say is you have certain hoops that you have to jump through, and if you don't jump through them, then you are automatically less than. Your worth is now less. Those who meet it have made the grade, get the full citizenship, whatever it is, get their full humanity, and those who haven't are now less than, can be, as we've seen in some societies, can be treated as subhuman, can have their property and their rights trampled and taken away from them, and made into chattels because they're not meeting this expectation, whatever it is. And it can be, Margaret, that there's no way that you can meet this expectation. The expectation is that your skin color be different. This is an unreasonable expectation, and the society's ability to dehumanize through these sort of arbitrary rules, these expectations, is key. That's key to how they're used in a toxic way.
Right. Well, it's a characteristic that humans have played out.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout all civilizations. I mean, you go back to, that's a tribal thing. It's, again, the us and them. If you are them, then you can be looked on as subhuman.
Right.
Maybe that's the point that bothers me the most, is that the minute someone is a them, they can be looked on as less than.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting as a point. Do we do that automatically in our own minds the minute someone is a them?
Yeah, I think that that's true, and I think that even internally, when you don't meet your own expectations, whatever they are, you think of yourself as being less than. Now, I think if we talk about what humans do in broad, you can also take it down to what humans do in specific. Your internal, if you allow it, this internal dialogue of "I'm not worthy," is what drives people into addiction, or drives people into various types of self-medication. Of this I couldn't do the XYZ thing. I am now no longer worthy. I'm not a human being. I'm less than. And
Well, I think that that goes hand in hand also with this concept of identity.
mm,
Because if you've taken that as your identity, you've taken the fact that you are less than as your identity, it will drive you into a pit of depression.
yeah,
And internally, you yourself know that there's something more here. It can't. This is not the only thing. I mean, this criteria is not the only thing that defines who I am.
right. Well, and right there, I think you should expound upon that, because that's really breaking this cycle. The tyranny of expectation is broken by the fact that you are more than doing or meeting or accomplishing.
You're more than you think you are. The expectation is a thinking thing.
Exactly. I'm glad you stopped. I was going to say think versus be.
Right. You are much more than you think you are, and you're certainly more than your circumstances, because those are two ways that we believe our identity is mirrored back to us. What we think and our situations. Then we try to extrapolate from those two avenues. Who am I?
Right.
But you are more than that. So much more than that.
But isn't that the driver? It's this existential search for identity, which allows us to be ruled by these expectations.
Right. Because you know that you don't know. Maybe that's the best way to put it. You really know you don't know. And maybe these people can give me a clue. Can you show me what this is, or who this is, or how this works? And that's life. My gosh. That's when you go through your life and you begin to understand that, that's not me. Or, yes, I embrace this. You choose. And the thing is, when you choose once, it doesn't mean that you can't change your mind either.
Right. Well, and the previous point is exactly right. It's this mental construct of thinking both that if I meet these expectations, then I will have an identity. I will be that thing, whatever that thing is, or be that concept or that abstraction. And I will be a full person if I meet these expectations.
Right.
And it's all on the mental side, and it's completely unbalanced with you already are a being that has value, intrinsic value, and that the balance of being and heart versus mind and doing and accomplishing has to be maintained.
And when we come back, okay, because I believe that it's understanding that who you think or what these expectations may be doesn't satisfy your soul, which is part of that emotional core part of you.
Well, and if you were expecting that we were going to go somewhere, you're right. So let's take an expected break, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about being versus expectation.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows can be downloaded. They're in podcast form at ArtistFirst.com. Now back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Were you expecting us?
I was.
You were. We were expecting you. It's like the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish. Anyway, no. So we're back. And we were talking tonight that tonight's show in The Soul of the Everyman is about the tyranny of expectations, and we talked a little bit about the various types of expectations, but I think the core of all of them is that the expectations are a mental construct, whether you have internalized it and it's sort of your own little mental voice that's telling you must do, or the society or the external forces are kind of pressuring you to do these things, whether it's Madison Avenue or Pol Pot. But all of them are about setting up mental hoops that you have to jump through, that you have to do. And the last thing we said, and you were saying it as we went to break, is that the being, the heart state is the balance of these things. The truth of these things is that you have to have both, and you're so much more than you think you are.
I think there's a phrase that's on the site that's the best way to make yourself crazy.
It is
to have expectation after expectation. You mentally set it up, and then just tear yourself apart on what you missed, or how it wasn't done correctly, or just that critical voice constantly playing at the back of your head. That expectation sets up that critical voice in the back of your head. And it's expectations. I mean, mental expectations are not necessarily done with compassion.
None. There's no compassion in them.
But you can learn how to put expectations together with compassion in mind. But that's conscious. Expectations for yourself as well as for others. But I would strongly recommend doing it for yourself first, because how can you have compassion for others if you are super critical upon yourself?
Well, we have to stop right there, because that's the golden point of the whole show, which you always have, and I'm jealous. But no, that's exactly it. Expectations without compassion built into them are soulless lashes. They drive you like a machine. And we all unfortunately know people whose expectations, their own internal voice of criticalness, drives them. They are. You literally say they are driven people, and there's zero compassion. But yet you're exactly right. She's exactly right. I was expecting her to be right. That building in the balance of expectation, the circumference of that is to build in the compassion, build in the heart. And I think that it could be encapsulated, or one way to do it is to say, yes, I expect to do well, but if I don't, there's always another opportunity. I can fail, and I have to get up and just try again. It's okay. You're not expected to be perfect, because I think the tyranny of expectations is the expectation of perfection.
Well, your focus is on doing it perfectly, as opposed to understanding that the goal of doing anything is to learn from it. And if you embrace the fact that you've learned something from it, then you've fulfilled the expectation that life is.
And I love the point you've made was compassion. You have to have compassion first and foremost for yourself. The quote that we have on the website, which you guys should always go to, we expect you to, is that that we can free ourselves, I'm paraphrasing, free ourselves from the expectations of others, or that internal voice, and give us back to ourselves. And that's a way of saying that, in essence, you realize that you are something regardless of the external or internal voice of expectation.
The lie, if you would, is believing that your worth is tied to meeting the expectation. That's a lie. That gets told to yourself over and over again. And when you see this, because you've got to see it, many times it's a habit form that you immediately just embrace and go, oh yeah, that's the way. Like, no. If you don't receive that, if you don't take that as a fact, then it cannot affect you, because you realize it's not real.
Well, and again, you have this great point. Receiving it is key, because you mentioned before, there's a choice. Expectation is, by definition, sort of an unreasonable thing. It's a something that you have to attain, which is hard to do, or maybe it's a perfection that cannot be attained. So you have to build in the compassion to fail, and you also have to build in the realization that you can't receive the judgment of failure. You have to say, okay, I'll just try. I fought, and the value was in the fight, the struggle, the learning, not in the achievement, and not in the judgment. So you don't receive the judgment of failure, but you also really don't receive even the judgment of success. Because
Right.
you say neither one is
Right.
important.
Exactly.
Therein
lies the balance.
I got one. Woohoo!
Of course you've got one.
Wait. Let me try it again. You don't receive the judgment of failure or the judgment of success. You say that what is the goal? The journey is the goal.
It's learning. It's expanding your awareness, because you learn step by step who you really are in those moments.
Your identity.
Mm-hmm. This is a journey of identity. That is what life is. It's not a journey of ideas that are layered one on top of the other. They're only ideas until they're actually executed. You're walking through them, and is it what you thought? Is anything ever what you thought it was going to be?
Well, isn't that great? Because people get to the end of all the successes and find emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it was, even in meeting every expectation, you can find emptiness. It's the other part of the pitfall. In failing, people fall into depression and black despair. In succeeding, people fall into depression and black despair because they're trying to find identity in the judgment of failure. Means you're not making it, you're not human, and even success means somehow you're making it, but you're still not. You missed the big middle.
Well, you're clinging to an illusion, a projection at that point. You're thinking that this is what is going to bring joy to your heart. And you may have happiness in a moment, but joy in your heart is a forever thing. And that has nothing to do with joy in your heart. You're trying to, you honestly believe you can think your way into it. It's like someone I know thought that she'd be able to have the perfect relationship if she got it all organized properly and checked off the boxes that this is who my ideal mate would be. And you're like, what are you, Barbie and Ken? I mean, really, human beings are not lists that need to be checked off. Everything is processed, and you learn as you go. So when you understand that you yourself are in a learning process, and every adventure, if you would, you learn something new. Finding someone who is willing to walk those steps with you is even more precious.
Yes.
Because another person let's face it, people have their expectations based on a whole bunch of mental constructs. It's gotta be. And most people live their life that way. It's gotta be.
Right.
But
go ahead.
The question I ask is, the people that are closest to you, your best friends, your heart-to-heart friends, they're the ones that you can just hang with. And there is no expectation to be together. That, in other words, you could be together without having to check off boxes of I did this and you do that, and I did this and you do that. Like, no, you're just together and experiencing the moment together. Doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something. You are participating in this time and space now.
Yeah, being. You're being together. I mean, but let's go back just two steps back. You know, the whole idea that you mentioned about compassion, building compassion into your expectations, is the compassion is the central thing that tempers, that exactly does what you just said. It means that your being state is not influenced. It's this little quote here, or Buddha's quote. Your internal being state is not influenced by the expectation. So this is how expectations can be used properly. You give yourself something that you want to do, or that you're told that you should do. But you build right there before you begin. You say, I may fail, or I may succeed, and then go deeper. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that I will try to do it, and I will learn. And so the immediately you focus not upon the success or the failure, or even upon the expectation. You just focus on the journey. And once you focus on the journey, then you can accomplish incredible things and not be changed by them. People accomplish incredible things, and then they say, well, I must be incredible. No, you're just a person. You're a man. You're a woman. You've done something amazing, but you aren't different. Your soul, your being is the same. You aren't identifying. You aren't. And then again, the same thing. You don't find the emptiness of achievement. And if you build in the compassion, you don't find the emptiness of failure. Neither one. They both matter, but they don't matter in the grand scheme of who you are. You are much greater than as you said, than what you think you are.
Yeah, you are greater
than what you accomplish or fail at.
Right, you are greater than your circumstances, and circumstances can be imposed on you, and it still doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Because you yourself understand who you are at the core, and nothing can change your identity once you reside in the heart or core of your being state. Nothing can change that. There's a lot of outward illusions that can shift and change, whether it's circumstances, whether it's judgments by the people putting a label on you of you are this or you are that or whatever. It's like, meh.
Right. And what you have there is, we had another quote that we thought about. We didn't put it here, but the other quote was from the Buddha, is that internal awareness of who you are that can't be influenced by anything external, and it doesn't have that, even the internal judgment, that awareness of who you are is also an immense source of freedom. You know, no amount of expectation, no amount of tyrannical expectation can rule your inner being. Yes, you can look as though you're imprisoned or you're being forced to do many things, but the internal being state is still free, even in the harshest gulag, or in the most, even in the most luxurious palace. You're still free. You're free of any attachment, both what we would call negative attachment or positive attachment. They're all, attachments are like expectations.
But that is the divine spark of who you are.
Yeah.
Your spirit can never be imprisoned, ever.
That's the lie that it can be.
Yeah, your spirit can never be imprisoned, and your spirit never dies.
Right. Can't even be imprisoned here.
Right. And it's understanding that that's the true freedom that you're touching into. When you identify with that part of your being, spirit part, which is vast, by the way. Vast. Nothing can contain you. Nothing. Not circumstances, not deep deep depression or horrendous darkness. Nothing can touch it.
Right.
Your physical body may suffer. It may not be able to withstand some of the dark things that are out there. But that's not who you are. You're so much more. But the illusion of this world is to try to get you to focus on that body illusion of which you were never satisfied.
Right.
Which is never perfect. Because the spirit aspect of you understands there is perfection within me. The lie is believing that somehow that perfection is going to be expressed in this physical form in this world. You may get glimpses of it, but this is not who you are. Your spirit aspect is perfect and eternal and incredibly beautiful.
And the, to come back to what we were talking about, the tyranny of expectation is the lies that you buy into, that your identity is bound in these expectations, meeting them or not meeting them, that your only happiness is to succeed or to become perfect in this physical, which is impossible. And your very humanity, your very worth, your ability to be something is somehow tied up in these doings. And those are all, they're all fallacies and falsehoods, and they're used to control.
Yes.
And one thing you just said, what we feel is that they are wrong. At a basic level, we know that they are wrong, but they can easily baffle and confuse people, especially the success. I think success is a worse master than failure, or not meeting.
It is a harder test.
It is a harder test, and to have great success is to be in shackles in many cases.
Yeah.
People will even say it. I had all this success and I felt I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't be I couldn't be me anymore because I was something else to everybody else. And this the fallacy of meeting every expectation, of being the perfect golden child is worse than being the pariah. But they're both wrong. And the tyranny of expectations is exactly that, whether they're internalized or they're externalized, or whether you meet them or don't meet them. Once you buy into that meeting something is what I need to do, or not meeting it is what I don't need to do, you're already off in the weeds in both cases, because the central thing you bought into is that I have to do something and either succeed or fail, or I'm bad or good. And all the I things about that are what you bought into. The I have to do this or that, or I'm bad or good, is already changed. The, clicking on your wrist.
It closes down your consciousness and your awareness and your identity into a two-dimensional being.
Yeah.
You are going to do something, and all you can do is do. So
and be judged.
And that means that everybody else around you has every right to judge, because that's the playing field, is the do field. So you either do it well or you don't, and then that's what matters.
She has such great points. The playing field is exactly it, and it's the do field. It's such a great point. No, it's because that's exactly it. You're put on this two-dimensional field, the do field, and there's goalposts everywhere, and you've got to get over them. And there's do. There's do everywhere.
There's do everywhere.
There's do everywhere that you have to jump over. And that three-dimensional being, or that multi-dimensional being, which is you, only the tiniest sliver of you can fit on the do field. But people want to make you be on the doo-doo field.
You must participate on this.
You must participate here. And it's funny because it's it's true. You know you're more. You said it before. We know we're more. We're vast. We don't fit on the doo-doo field. Not the smallest part of us fits there. But yet, once you play the game, once you buy in, you know.
When you decide that this is the game, this is the field that you're going to participate in, then you have shut down a lot of areas of who you actually are.
But good point again. You have to decide. You have to agree, and you can also not. You can also jump. You can draw back.
Right.
You can decide. Remember the old game? The old war games. The only way to win is not to play the doo-doo game. You have to learn not to play, or to know that you're playing.
It's identifying the field. All right. It's a whole different way of thinking about it, because once you begin to think this way, you can't unsee what you are seeing. When you see that this is a field of play that someone is trying to engage you in, you have that moment to decide whether or not to engage. And it's always up to you. Now, if you have come to the realization that, I'm in this two-dimensional doo-doo field, I decide otherwise. I do not engage any longer.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what people say at that point. That's when it all falls apart, because suddenly you rise above that two-dimensional field and you have height, because length and breadth is the only thing that matters in a two-dimensional field. Suddenly your consciousness raises up higher and you see the broader field and you see the boundaries of it and you see how small it actually is.
And you can meet others who have also risen above and have a real relationship. You've kind of taken the red pill. You're no longer in the doo-doo field. and I think I think we have to take the red pill at this point. If you guys were expecting us to go all the way to the top of the hour, we have to get out 2 minutes early, but we're going to say that this has been The Soul of the Everyman.
And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael. And it's been wonderful having you.
Hi, my name is Christina Garlick, and my new book, Nevada Rain, is now available. It's a sci-fi fantasy story for ages 14 and up. I hope you check it out, and of course,